Hi, I'm Arthur. Why do I sound confused this time? And this is part 18 in a 20-part series I am doing covering the all-star Space Marine chapters of the 40k universe. These guys are the most unique, most cool, the bestest chapters in the setting for one reason or another. Do you need to have seen the other parts to understand this one? No, but it would make me happy. Now, usually the reason a chapter is on this list is pretty straightforward. The Flesh Terrors are just one of the most brutal and most beloved chapters in the setting. Same goes for the Black Templars, for the Angry Marines. They are kind of mythological to the fan base at this point. They all have a very unique sense of identity to them. With the topic of today, we're going to be discussing something kind of weirder than all of them. This is kind of an all-time original chapter. Unironically, I don't think there's any other chapter that is like these, with maybe one similar one, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. The chapter we are covering today is probably the most unique chapter in the setting, at least canonically. Their formation stemmed from them being pretty fond of staring directly into the sun for hours on end and believing that once their brain starts whispering to them, they have found a way to see the future, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of obscure and weird, and there's not a lot of lore about it, but we're going to talk about it. There is a lot of stuff to talk about here. So, with that in mind, let's talk about the Sons of Medusa. But before we do, let's get some bills paid. 11th edition is here, fellas and fellettes. You know what that means? I'm playing Conquest's Last Argument of Kings, obviously. I love this game, and 40k, calm down. But there is a kind of unique issue with Conquest minis that I've been realizing as I've been painting and transporting them. And you know what that is? They are big. Like 30% bigger on average than your average 40k model. Which, for the sake of showing off cool models, yeah, that's pretty cool when you have a bunch of guys in a Horde army that's bigger than your average Horde army in 40k. But when it comes to transporting and storage, that shit is rough. But thanks to the one, the only, the beautiful, in every regard, Tabletop Stronghold, I can actually store all of my Conquest minis pretty easily with their XL case. Now, I have talked about the XL case a lot before, you know, it's pretty great, but what makes this conversation a little bit more different? Easy. I have two now. That's right, I bought it myself because I just wanted a second one, so I can store more of my minis and not have to put them in labeled containers and boxes so that I can look for them later and see that they're all chipped even though I've varnished them. Yes, it's happened, and yes, I'm always mad. Easy to transport, easy to place, and resilient. The MagCase 2.0 XL, regular, and hell, the mini are pretty damn good for Conquest miniatures of any size for the most part. So, using code BONES25 in checkout, you can get 25% off. So, if you play Conquest or that other game people are currently talking about now, you should grab a case using my link in the description or like the pinned comment. Thanks once again to Tabletop Stronghold, the madman he is, for supporting this channel. And let's get back to the Sons of Medusa, which isn't Conquest, but I don't know, it's good enough. So to understand the Sons of Medusa is difficult. It's kind of like trying to explain the history of Rome in less than 20 minutes, which, knowing me and my less than stellar ability to be succinct at any given point in the day, that ain't happening. I know it sounds like I'm beating around the bush, but I can come right out and say something like, yeah, the Sons of Medusa are a chapter that was never a part of any founding, and technically they're not even a chapter, only like on paper are they one, but that even wouldn't really be a good way to sum it up there, right? But you wouldn't really understand anything. So I kind of have to fill in the blanks with as much of the incomplete information that we have. So all that being said, there was this thing like 5,000-ish years ago, give or take, known as the Nova Terra Interregnum, which actually is a lot more easy to understand in terms of naming, but I'm not here to break down Latin. It's a funny scenario, the time of two emperors, which no, we don't know who the second emperor is. But the crux of the whole situation was during the rebuilding of the Imperium following the Horus Heresy, there was a lot of random schisms, people believing that due to the Emperor no longer being around, the Imperium was going to stagnate, die, and fall to pieces, which not inherently wrong, but whatever. This specifically starts on a planet known as Nova Terra, which is like Terra, but Nova. They basically said they were the ones in control of the Segmentum Pacificus, the side of the universe that Terra and all that's on, which I will admit, bold claim, so it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how that pans out. There is a theory that this was a big plot by the Fallen in order to destabilize the Imperium, which to my understanding is only partially proven, but we aren't here to discuss the fact that Cypher hasn't been mentioned in a while and he was pretty significant a couple years back, and we should all be a smidge worried, but it's not about those weird green boys, it's about these weird green boys. During the Novatera Interregnum, there were several cults without the direct oversight of the Inquisition curtailing their beliefs were allowed to prosper. This led to a small movement that got a bit out of hand during the Novatera Interregnum, known as the Moira Schism. Basically, on the Forge world of Moira, the tech priests there discovered that there are subtle yet observable fluctuations in the way the Astronomicon glows, which if you don't know what the Astronomicon is, brother, I'm so sorry. I'm not really going to go in depth about that, but it's basically the psychic light that the Emperor gives off that a lot of ships use their soul-bonded psyker on board to guide them through. It's weird. Through the observing of the light emitted by the Emperor, the priests of Moira believed that they could understand the flow of time, like the Emperor was telling them things yet to come. Basically a weird way of divining the future that can be summed up as we stared at the sun for so long it eventually started talking to us, which is, okay, in most other settings would have you be considered kind of off your rocker, but in 40k, I mean, I guess you're now the head of a cult dedicated to staring at bright lights until they either go blind or save the world. Now, this sounds stupid to all of us, but to skip ahead a bit, there may be a little bit of merit to it. There were some predictions made through this method that became pretty accurate retroactively, which disconcerts and unnerves me. But that is neither here nor there. The Moiraean belief spread like a wildfire throughout the various cults of the Mechanicus. Even chapters of Marines who were relatively close to the Mars sect were getting a bit corrupted by it, though corrupted is kind of the incorrect word here because it's not like it was chaos or anything. It might not seem like much of a problem now, but the main prediction of the Moiraean tech priests was going to eventually cause an issue, because the future that these tech priests saw were basically that the tech priests of Mars and their belief system was going to be absorbed into the cult of the Emperor. They would lose their autonomy and lose their identity. So a lot of those who followed the Moiraean belief ended up rebelling and trying to fight against the future that they saw coming, which had a bit of a knock-on effect, as a lot of tech marines who were associated with Mars and Moira ended up kind of adopting that same mentality. More specifically, a shitload of Iron Hands and Iron Hand successors began to actually rebel in their own way, where they were basically trying to take control and spread the belief of their own sun-gazing, ideologies to everyone else in the chapter. Fortunately, Moira, the Forge world, was blown up, so bye-bye to that philosophy. Most of the worshippers of this ideal were killed outside of the Space Marines, and the members of the Iron Hands who carried this belief were stopped by the whole chapter coming together, and instead of outright killing them, they just banished every member of the chapter in question who believed this and said that you're never allowed to raise arms against another Iron Warriors or Iron Warriors successor out there, as it was a bit more humane and it would have been a waste of gene seed where people were just not really corrupted. They just held a belief that no one really shared. The members of the chapter, as well as the members of other Iron Hands successors who were exiled for the same reason, started to band together for the sake of safety as kind of this roving renegade band that weren't excommunicated from the Imperium and were able to help out, but they didn't really have any distinct colors. Though shout out to fellow amphetamine and goth woman enjoyer Autek Moore, who instead of banishing the Moiraeans from his chapter, the Red Talons, he just fucking slaughtered them all because that dude is a professional op and is trying his best to collect blood vendettas like I collected gum wrappers on the side of the road. Fuck off, a man needs hobbies. So when a chapter goes renegade, even if they aren't excommunicated by the Imperium, they are usually inclined to go full chaos. The reason being is because Imperial resupply in the further reaches of the sector is usually very hard even for a normal chapter, but if you don't get the official cosign of the Administratum due to your existence not really being above board, yeah, it's kind of a pirate's life for thee after the fact. And if you don't like being a pirate, well, you know, the Dark Gods will usually give you evil things to use. Hell, for chapters that the Imperium doesn't like, they barely ever get resupplies anyhow. Just look at the Marines Malevolent. They are almost ignored whenever they ask for anything. So it is a testament to the Sons of Medusa as a renegade band of nutjobs that not once did they resort to chaos, to our knowledge, nor did they forsake the Imperium. In fact, they would work very hard to stay in the good graces of the Imperium as they tried to actually still do their job protecting mankind, which is usually done in the most Iron Hands way possible by killing the living shit out of the enemies of mankind rather than actually defending them. But hey, if it works, go for it, right? Either way, by the latter half of that whole 5,000-year gap I mentioned between then and now, they had reached a point of not only being at full chapter size of about 1,000 Marines, they were also pretty decently stocked. We will touch on that a bit more soon, but their service record was brought into question because the Imperium was going through a great reforging at the time. They had wanted to push to reclaim some lost ground, and thus they were pushing for quite a few foundings of Space Marines at the time. But here's the thing. You have a fully made, coherent, and loyal pseudo-chapter right here and ready to be brought back into the fold, so they began to scrutinize the war band that was and try to find any hint of chaotic corruption or just some kind of weird beliefs that could be hard to manage if they were brought back in. And after finding the answers they wanted, they had allowed the warband to be reconsecrated and re-added back into the Imperium as a true and blue chapter, getting normal resupplies and also being given a number designation as well as the name of the Sons of Medusa as a true and honest Iron Hand successor. I think this has never truly ever happened before. The closest I can think of is something like the Death Eagles or maybe like the Emperor's Scythes, though the Death Eagles has never been really confirmed to be a loyalist contingent birthed out of the Black Shield group headed in the Horus heresy of the Emperor's Children, and the Scythes of the Emperor were just a group of Space Marines led by an Ultramarine captain whom eventually just stayed on Sotha for so long that they were given their own chapter designation during a founding. It's kind of a weird story. It's why I have to discuss the backstory of the Sons of Medusa, because I don't think there is any other chapter that is like them, that was just birthed out of necessity, and they never really were a part of any founding. It's all very different from everything else, so with them being brought back into the folds of the Imperium, they had quite a lot to prove. The reason being is because, well, there was a whole lot of suspicion going around about them. They were renegades for a while after, and they did have a bit of a reputation for being a little shifty at the best of times, but the Sons of Medusa went on to prove they weren't traitors in the most horrific way possible by committing a xenocide so potent on a race of psychically powerful bug aliens so terrible that it is theorized that at some point they ran out of bullets chapter-wide and just started to beat them to death with their bare hands. Well, bare hands in power armor, so, you know, pneumatic press, jaws of life-squishing heads, and then beating people with other people. Yeah. Nah, the Sons of Medusa had a lot of energy when they came to killing the enemies of mankind as opposed to protecting them, and it led to a lot of bloody incursions, because it's almost like they had a point to prove that they weren't actually traitors. Now, they did develop a few bad habits as they were renegades, and these habits being, well, for one, not taking any chances and mathematically attacking things in a way that makes the most sense to kill the living shit out of them and then, you know, making little casualties of their own, which might be an echo of the Moirian belief system that they had before about prediction and probability. I will go on to admit that there isn't much info on if they still follow that whole sun watching thing, but it still goes to show that they do like seeing the future, even if it is just mathematical. It isn't really a big deal, I guess, as long as they get the job done, but the problem that people have with them most of the time is the second thing that they do, and it's more annoying than it is evil. They are a bunch of filthy, stinking looters. They will steal what is necessary for them to continue on the battlefield, or by God, they will die trying. Even with resupplies coming in now, they just steal shit. Did a chapter recently come through here and die attempting to defend the planet? Well, here comes the heroic members of the Sons of Medusa to mop up and save the day, leaving nothing but a bunch of naked Space Marine corpses in their wake. For fuck's sake, their favorite target is other Space Marine chapters that have gone renegades, so they have a reason to prove that they are still incredibly loyal to the Imperium, but that's not the only reason they do it. It's because if they make the kill, they keep the spill. It's not evil, it's just annoying and kind of rude. The worst part of it is that they apparently practice something called Techno-exorcism. I'm paraphrasing here, which is essentially them sanctifying non-Imperial weapons to be used by Space Marines, which I initially assumed they would find demon weapons and then banish the demon out of it to be able to use it or put it into a state where it is usable. Something like the Relictors or what the Axe of Mordecai is for the leader of the Space Wolves. But no, it's kind of closer to what the Death Watch do, in sort of a, oh hello platoon of Tau, let me take your really cool flamethrowers and add that to my collection, and then somehow mount that on the bottom of my bolt gun so that it just looks like a regular flamethrower with a bunch of extra doodads. The Death Watch does it a lot with, you know, Necron phase tech, and there is this one image of like a Tau pulse rifle being used with a bolt gun stock, which is horrifying to look at. But yeah, and it's sanctioned by the Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition, so I guess it makes it legal? I really don't know, but yeah. I mean, I feel like if you tell a member of the Sons of Medusa to drop that Leaks of Photon plasma gun, they'll respond to you with something to the tune of, why don't you come and fucking get it? But what do I know, man? I'm just trying to make sense of everything I'm reading and probably failing. So, with the Sons of Medusa, there is a lot of weirder aspects to them that you've probably noticed at this point, like the fact they may actually have the blueprints to create dreadnought chassis, which is cool and incredibly rare. They also seem to have a lot of land raiders, which is very, very useful because land raiders are goddamn cool. With the discussion of the Imperium's opinion and decision making about them done, let's get into the next and final part of the video and break down the various elements of their chapter, how they function, their main way of conducting combat, and the weird way that their chapter is divided. I know I've been using the word weird a lot for this specific video, but if you've been following along, you do understand it. You see this. So yeah, let's talk about their weird mix of the Codex Astartes and the weird clan culture that the Iron Hands have. So you guys know the Codex Astartes, right? 10 companies, 100 Marines per company, so on and so forth, each one having its own reason for existence. Yeah, the Sons of Medusa follow the Codex Astartes so in that they see it as a good strategy book for obliterating things. Tactically, they adjust the squads they have to meet their situation, kind of like how the Codex, wants you to, but they have a sergeant per squad, leading it, applying tactical knowledge that they have acquired over a long career. But the big one is that they actually consist of 3 large war clans. These clans are a carryover from the Iron Hands, who are made up of 10 clans that are from the planet of Medusa. So these war clans are divided further into 3 companies per clan. A battle company, a tactical company, and a support company. It's made up the same way that these same companies would be in each chapter, albeit a little bit more condensed. But you may also notice that makes 9 companies instead of 10, and that means they don't have a scout company, which is true. But they find it more important to do something kind of similar to the Black Templars. On-the-job training, as it were, with each war clan having dedicated trainees to each company who will grow into fully fledged battle brothers. Now, this sounds like it would be at least a little bad for business, but in all honesty, no, not really. They have been at full strength for a little while and don't really seem to have issues maintaining that strength, especially after the Primaris stuff went down. Though, also, if you may allow me one aside, which, my entire channel summed up in a sentence, when they were given Primaris Marines for their chapter, it was stated that due to their more bellicose nature, the torchbearer fleet that was sent to give them the schematics for the armor, the weapons, and also dudes to reinforce them, they were actually equipped with significantly more custodies just in case the Sons of Medusa got violent, which I thought is kind of funny. Luckily, they didn't, though though incorporating the Gray Shield detachment that they were given was a bit more difficult than others because they have that reputation of being renegades at one point, and, you know, true loyalist sons are a little bit twitchy around them. But eventually they fell in line, or they were violently cannibalized and murdered in order to make new Primaris Marines, and their gear was just taken. Either way, it worked out. I mentioned it earlier that they are a bit temperamental, but that isn't 100% true. They are actually pretty taciturn on the battlefield, similar to that of their parent chapter, the Iron Hands. But deep down, there is this kind of hate in them. Not anger, not rage, they just hate. It's this cold, bitter fury, where when they are slighted on the battlefield, even if they were outplayed, true and honestly, they take that shit to heart and usually go out of their way to grind that opponent down into dust to prove that they are not weak in the slightest. They see every loss as having a weakness pointed out, and they take that whole weakness of the flesh thing pretty hard. They have this obsession with bionics like every other Iron Hands does, but it's to some degree worse, and it's also a lot more morbid. So basically, once they have their first limb removed and replaced with bionics, they often cleanse it and dip the bones in adamantine so that it is this kind of eternal reminder of the weakness of their flesh that was removed. And yes, they wear it into battle. What other options are there, honestly? As for how they battle, it's very much like the Iron Hands. They aren't there to fight, they are there to kill. They don't seek to save people, they seek to kill the enemy that attempted to murder the civilians of the Imperium. Now, this is kind of the cold distinction between them and something like the Flesh Terrors or the Carcharodons, which kind of end up with the same result. Where the more murdery, monstery chapters I just mentioned kill because they enjoy doing it and they see battle as something they enjoy, and rage is a core tenet of their chapter. The Sons of Medusa do it for two reasons. Both are kind of the hereditary carryover of the Iron Hands. One, to prove they are strong. Varus Manus, before his death, had to instill this belief that the Iron Hands need to strive to be stronger in all things. Failure cannot be accepted and must always be overcome. Thus, the constant desire to upgrade, augment, and so on. And then you have two, because to them, killing is their function. It's the easiest way to overcome the enemies of mankind, where the Salamanders seek to shield the people of the Imperium so that when they redouble their efforts to fight back, they can repel whatever enemy showed up. The Ultramarines fortify defenses and supply lines to make it so that we have the tools to fight whatever shows up. The Iron Hands and most of their successors see only the most efficient way for permanence in this universe is to take the most direct approach. We won't have to worry about the enemies of mankind if there aren't any left. Thus, when they prosecute a war, they seek to obliterate everything, man, woman, and child down to the last, which is cool. They are cold and calculating, and one of the most interesting successor chapters in the setting, and I can't help but feel I really want a joint campaign book between them and the Best Boy chapter of Marines, the Red Talons, as there is a bit of a fucking generational beef with these two. Either way, I think if I had to pick a successor of the Iron Hands I like most, it would either be a tie between them or the Red Talons. While I love them in concept, I really like that they have such a chip on their shoulder in execution. They have so much to prove in their eyes and are doing their best to just prove that they are loyal and true sons of the Imperium. In the most Iron Handsy way ever, I mind you. They are the perfect idea of an all-star, as they are so unique. Shout out to the boy himself, Mishmash Painting, two in a row I guess, as he has his own gaggle of Marines for the Sons of Medusa, and they're his main chapter, and we actually fought each other on the tabletop with my Kroot and his Sons of Medusa, and it was a total massacre on my end, but it is what it is, they're Kroot. The Marines on screen are actually his Marines, and I really liked how they look. He also did a video tutorial on how to paint them several times, and you should check out either of them. Outside of all that, bros, we are getting close to the end of this series, so close to the end of the All-Stars list that I don't think you guys could be surprised about what's going to happen next, but I do have 2 slots left, so if you guys come up with a better idea than what I have, feel free to recommend it in the comments. Like, what's your favorite chapter of Marines? So, yeah, alongside that, let me know what you think about the Sons of Medusa, and who are your favorite chapter of Iron Hand successors? Shout out to that one guy who's going to say the Iron Lords. course. Either way, special thanks to my channel members for supporting me, my editors. Say hi to Alice and thank her for her lovely work. With your help, I am able to do this as a job, pay her, and get all this done at a reasonable pace. I have a lot of cool stuff planned for the future, but for now, I thank you all once again for your support. And thank you all once again for watching. Till next time, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Fucking Jesus, I've had to turn my fan off for this entire, the 10-minute stretch of recording so it doesn't pollute the audio. It's so fucking hot. It heated up so much. I'm so caked and sweat. It feels like I just got out of the pool, but I can't dry because it's probably somewhere between 90% and 100% humidity in my room. Jesus, it feels like I'm swimming in pea soup.